Hello, hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jonathan, Wella Sebastian, Portfolio Brand Educator. Thank you guys for joining me this morning for our virtual class, Salon Republic family. A little bit about myself before I get started into today's looks. Again, my name is Jonathan. Been with Wella for about the past 7 years, with about 15 years in the beauty industry. I live and work in West Hollywood for the past 10 years in the salon, 3 days a week, and then the rest of the time I get to travel around, teach other stylists, teach hair students, and even get to teach from my own apartment sometimes. So I'm happy that you guys got to join me today to go over Wella's new collection, Signature Naturals. So before we get started, I want to think about what comes to mind when we're talking about Signature Naturals. This is our autumn-winter collection for 2022. And we're thinking about kind of taking it back to fundamentals in terms of hair color trends. So I think throughout the past few seasons, we're still seeing a lot of lived-in color, but also a lot of desaturated blondes, a lot of really, really over-processed platinums. And we're trying to move away from that, utilizing our Celestone Perfect range, utilizing Color Touch, utilizing Shinefinity, and Blonde Orplex. We're going back to fundamentals and really customizing and tailoring unique looks without going so far removed from that client or that model's natural color palette. So if you guys want to learn more about the techniques in the collection and actually see the looks, feel free to download the Wella app if you don't already have it. The Wella Professionals app is free to download, and the entire lookbook, the collection slideshow, and all the step-by-steps of the looks and the products that we used are available on the Wella app if you are curious. So I want to dive in, but before we get started on the actual techniques for a couple of the looks that I've chosen from the collection, one thing that I want to keep in mind is when you look at the slides of these looks and actually look at the presentation and look at the looks all together, all of the shades and all of the looks are very natural, not monochromatic, but all very seamless in the way that they're put together. There's not one look in the collection that I don't think is wearable in the salon, which I'm so happy we're getting back to really achieving the goal of what we do behind the chair. Really just sticking to what we do every day, what's going to make us money, and what's going to re-inspire us to get excited about hair color again. I don't know about you, but I was really excited to move away from the more really heavily processed, icy, desaturated looks and bring warmth and a neutrality back to our hair color palette. I was really excited for that. What you'll see in this collection is everything ranging from really dark olivey with green and blue undertone blacks, all the way through dimensional brunettes, all the way through creamy, warm, neutral to slightly golden blondes. So I was really excited that the one thing that you won't see again is really platinum in this collection. It's all very natural. We're really focusing on the health of the hair. And one really big highlight of this collection is we're utilizing our newest addition to our family, Shinefinity. So if you guys have any questions throughout this presentation, please feel free to hit me up in the chat box. If you're using Shinefinity in the salon already and know what it is and love it, give me a little thumbs up in the chat box. But I do want to go over it because it is new and not everyone has had a chance to play with it or take any education on it. Again, a lot of these resources are on the Wella app if you want to do a little bit more of a deep dive. But I want to go over briefly what it is and why we're focusing so heavily on it for this collection. So Shinefinity, for those of you guys that haven't seen it yet, in these little pink boxes here, this is our newest addition to our demi-permanent color glaze family. So we know and love Wella Color Touch. It's been around for a long time. We use it, we love it for really saturated demi-permanent results. What we felt that there was a need for, however, was a more translucent, sheer result that with no chance or no likelihood of it adjusting the base or lifting the natural color, exposing any underlying pigment. We know and love Color Touch for its ability to not only gloss and tone, but also it does have an ability to shift the base occasionally, especially if it's used with the 4% 13 volume developer as opposed to the 1.96% developer. The reason that it can do that is because we wanted to give it the ability to blend away grays up to 50%. So because of that, it does need to expand the cuticle and penetrate a little bit more if you're trying to utilize it that way. What I've discovered doing color behind the chair is every once in a while, you'll get that highlighted client. We've just done a full head of beautiful foils on. She's got a naturally lighter base as it is, and sometimes even color touch with 1.9% will shift the base slightly to where it may not even be visible immediately to the eye, but I notice when that client returns that it could leave me with a very, very soft banding. So we felt the need that we wanted to have a color glazing demi-permanent option where there was no risk of that. So that's why Shinefinity was created. It is a demi-permanent again, so you're going to be utilizing this for a lot of different things in the salon. Again, main difference between Shinefinity and Color Touch is it is more sheer. It's more translucent. Color Touch is still translucent, but it's a lot more saturated in pigment, so you'll still see dimension underneath of it. But as opposed to Shinefinity, you will see every bit of dimension underneath of it. It's almost looking through a stained glass window at the dimension or whatever color you're putting it on, again, without risking lifting the natural pigment whatsoever. So I thought that was really exciting to have that option. Especially now we're focusing on a lot of root shadow, root melts behind the chair in the salon. So again, we're focusing on that scalp area a lot where there's more heat created some of the time. So again, just having this color that really doesn't affect that natural base whatsoever is really, really helpful. So just really brief overview of it. If you've been using Wella for a while, first thing you'll notice for the Shinefinity shades is you'll notice the eye-catching pink packaging, but also the numbering has changed slightly, if you guys can see that. So typically, when I'm talking in Wella numbering systems, and if any of you guys aren't Wella users and need more clarification on anything that I'm talking about, feel free to hit me up in the chat box as well. But for our numbering system, we use level, a slash, or what we call a stroke, and then the tone after it. So what has been added to this is the inclusion of a 0 before the level itself as well. So as opposed to if I'm speaking in Color Touch and using a level 8 natural, I would be saying 8 stroke 0. If I'm using that same shade in Shinefinity, it's a 0 8 stroke 0, indicating that it's translucent and that there's 0 lift and 0 damage. This is our first hair color that we've launched in our demi-permanent family, where we can actually claim that it does not damage the hair at all. And it's got a really interesting technology behind it as well. I'm not going to go super, super deep into why it works the way that it works, but for my hair science color nerds out there like myself, I love knowing the pH of things and why they work and what the point of difference between this and any other demi-permanent color glaze option would be. And primarily, just to make it really simple, it's all about the pH of this color. So what happens when you mix the color in the bowl is it goes to a pH of about a 7.5. So just very, very slightly alkaline. And then as soon as it touches the hair, it starts dropping to about a 6.5. So just slightly acidic. That's what ensures that we don't get that base bump or that base lift. But also, it never drops below a 6.5 pH. Because of the technology in the color and in the activator, when that's combined, it keeps that pH stable, and that prevents it from dropping. It's not a color that you have to babysit, so it will not, over deposit tone on the hair, especially on overly porous hair. We know a lot of times we've got to be really careful and watch those color pigments, especially in the cool shades. But you don't have to run the risk of really worrying about it. So you can actually apply that toner or that root melt on top of previously lightened hair, walk away and let it process, and not have to worry about any unexpected wild card results when you come back. So it also leaves the hair, because of that technology, it leaves the hair in such a good condition. It's so shiny, it's so healthy, and you can actually, our tagline is shine, you can actually feel it in the hair. The hair feels healthier than it did before you even colored it. So I thought that exciting. There's a wide range of shades available. In this fun little swatch ring, you can see all of our shades from natural to warm to cool. We'll be using combinations of all of these in the Shinefinity collection. But what's great about the swatch book and the swatch ring is it shows you the shade itself on white hair and the shade itself on the depth of the level. So for example, this is a 0 stroke 602, or I'm sorry, 06 stroke 02 on white hair, so you can see the pure tone of it. Also, there's a 06 stroke 02 on a level 6. So that's actually going to give you an idea of the tone, what you're working with in the bottle by itself, versus what happens if you put it on the level of the shade that you've selected. So I thought that was a really helpful visual, especially as I was learning about color, to really ensure that I had a full understanding of what the tones were doing on pigmented hair and unpigmented hair. So I was very excited about that. How do we use it? On whatever canvas you're putting it on, you're going to select your shade. We have 2 activators. So you'll notice they're not called developers. There's not a developer strength on them, but they are both around a 7 volume. The only difference between these 2 activators is the consistency that you're going to get when you mix it with Shinefinity. So one is a brush and bowl activator. That's going to keep the viscosity a little bit thicker, especially if you're really kind of being methodical about the root shadowing process and really trying to strategically place the color. I like a little bit of a thicker consistency so it doesn't run the risk of dripping and transferring onto hair around it. The other activator is a bottle application. So if you're someone that is doing it all over glaze at the bowl, someone that's doing a really quick tone that is just going everywhere all at once, this is a little bit of a looser viscosity that actually allows you to emulsify and spread it through the hair really quickly and very easily. The mixing ratio of these with the color always is going to be 1 part of your Shinefinity shade and 1 part of your Shinefinity activator that you've chosen. So it keeps it really simple to remember. It's not a 1-to-2 ratio. It is a 1-to-1 across the board. And you're going to let that process for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. So depending on what you're trying to do and how much tonal deposit you want to get, you have a really wide range if you just want a little quick flash of tone or whether you want a more deep saturated result. We do recommend it goes on shampoo towel dried hair. Most of the time, that's what you're going to be working on because you're going to be using it a lot on pre-lightened hair or a lot for all over glossing. So shampoo towel dried hair with no heat, it processes for up to 20 minutes. If you want a more rich saturated result, you can apply it under heat and you'll get even more pigment penetration into the hair strand. Also, if you want a little bit more concentration of color, you can also feel free to utilize it on dry hair if you want a more rich saturated result. So there's a lot of versatility and a lot of options with this color line. Again, if you have any other questions about it, feel free to hit me up in the chat box or utilize the Wella app because all of this information and way more is there for you to utilize and play around with. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with my selected look from the Signature Naturals collection. Something that I really enjoyed about this collection when I was being trained on it was that there is such a versatility of options when you're looking at this collection. So it's all open to interpretation. It's really there for inspiration, and then you kind of create your own technique within that. Again, the step-by-steps are on the app if you want to recreate the exact looks, but I like to have the creative freedom where I see it and love the color palette and think about a different way of placing it or a different way of approaching it. And again, they can be utilized, these techniques are pretty much across the board, can be utilized on brunettes, black hair, redheads, or blondes. So whatever, it's all about creating seamless dimension and elevating that surface behind the chair. So this was my pre-done doll head I chose. She is one of our deeper looks from the collection. And if you can see the way the light is hitting it there, she's got a little bit of a shadowed base and several elements of dimension coming through the hair. It's very subtle, but we're thinking about really understated luxury with this collection. It's not all about the high impact of going from a level 2 to a level 10 and having that amount of contrast. We still want contrast and dimension, but we want it to be a lot more seamless for this collection. So I'm not super concerned about really high impact. It's going to be more about luxury. It's going to be more about looking expensive looking rich, healthy hair. Because again, we're always going back to the health of the hair. And you can see Shinefinity was utilized on this doll head after we had lightened her from her natural base. And you can see the shine and the gloss in the hair. There is barely any product in there, and it feels just as soft as it looks, which I thought was really important. So we're going to be aiming for this dimensional chocolate look today, going into our demo. So I will be getting rid of her and bringing over my lovely model here. So I've kept the sectioning for this look extremely simple, just breaking it down into 4 different areas of the head And that's going to be my guideline for what I'm putting within those subsections. So when I'm thinking about really seamless natural color, really not going very far away from their natural color, maybe only lifting it a few levels, I'm really thinking about heavier color application throughout this halo section underneath of it. And then as I'm working up the head, going a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit closer together with my sections, because again, it's not going to be about super high impact, bold ribbons or bands of color. It's just going to be about seamless signature naturals. So I've isolated diagonal subsection just underneath the occipital. I've got another diagonal rectangular subsection from occipital to just below the crown. I am encompassing front hairline all the way to just behind the ear at a diagonal as well. And then I also have a section isolated on top, which is in the shape of a diamond. So depending on what you're going to want to do for your desired end result, you can work from bigger subsections throughout here when we're foiling or painting, and then completely leave this top section natural as a veil, especially if they've got a layered haircut. You can have a veil of their natural coming into lightness on the ends and shadow that all together. Or you can just highlight through this as well in a smaller, more maybe a microweave situation, just so we're working from really soft and delicate to slightly bolder through the bottom. So it's really about a gradation of color that's going to give us the impact of more of a sombre, really, really soft dimensional look. And again, this can be utilized on brunettes, this can be utilized on blondes, this can be utilized on redheads to create really beautiful natural dimension as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I'm going to angle this so you guys can really see her in the light. If I need to move anything around, please let me know. I have already mixed up a bowl of our Blondor Plex, which is our newest addition to our lightened family. It has been out for a little bit of time now, but if you know and love the original Blondor and you're using that for a lot of your lightning but haven't really played around with this yet, the only difference is that this includes our Wella Plex Bond Builder. So there's no need to add an additional bond builder when you're utilizing this lightener, whether you're painting with it, oiling with it, or doing a global application. To get the benefit out of this lightener, and again, it works the same way as original Blondor, same lift, same speed, same clarity of tone. The only difference is if you want the benefit of the bond builders, you have to stabilize them afterwards with our Wella Plex Step 2 Bond Stabilizer. So the way you would do that was be rinse out your highlight or whatever lightning application you've chosen, towel dry before you shampoo even, and apply the Step 2 from root to end everywhere for up to 10 minutes to really stabilize those bonds and make sure that they're going to stay in the hair and not just be shampooed out. So I've chosen that as my tool of choice, and I've mixed it because I don't want to go so far away from her natural color. I've mixed it with actually a 10 volume. So I'm not looking for a ton of lift. If this was someone who wanted more of a cool to kind of escalate through the warm underlying pigments that may or may not kind of get in the way of your end result. So if you want a little bit of a cooler end result, you might have to lift a little bit more and deposit back down so that you don't have to worry about your the warm underlying pigments shining through. So for her, I don't mind warmth, so I'm going a little bit low. All right, hopefully you guys can all see that. I'm sticking with diagonal subsections all the way up the head because, again, I'm looking for natural seamless blend. I'm not looking for high impact boldness of the color or really any kind of ribbons throughout the hair. I want it to be seamless, and we are going to gloss this back down so I can take larger sections, but I want to ensure that they're blended. So I'm going to be going in with my YS Park 3D teasing comb. This is just my favorite for any kind of back combing that you're going to be doing throughout their hair color application. This is something that I really enjoy utilizing because it just really locks my teas in there and allows me to get a really seamless blend. If you are more comfortable utilizing a teasing board or those clips that kind of hold your teases into place, it's really, truly up to you. This is just the tool that I find works best for me. So I'm going to go in at a diagonal, and I'm taking a heavier pickup through here. I'm not taking a slice out of this subsection. I'm just going straight in with a heavier weave, and the size of that is up to you. And then I'm just very delicately back brushing 2 to 3 times and locking my comb in. So reason I love doing that is because it saves me having to have another tool to just to have on my tray or to have in my hand. I just easily get rid of it. And then once I've teased 2 to 3 times, lock it in, and then I go in with my painting. What you'll also notice is I've chosen to use thicker illuminage papers from one of our older Brazilian illuminage collections. I have so many left over that I actually really enjoy utilizing these because of their stability. They're just a little bit thicker, and that eliminates the use of a board or a balayage paddle for me, because I get enough stability from the actual illuminage paper itself. So painting as high up to the root or as low as you need it. Keeping in mind, the more you tease any of your subsections, the more depth that you're going to maintain towards the root. So the less you tease, the less depth you're going to maintain towards the root. So keep that in mind when you're choosing how many times to actually back brush your subsection, but also in terms of how high up you want to create that lightness. And I'm going to sandwich this on top. Take my comb out, and then I just create a couple folds throughout the corners. And again, this is just a personal preference of mine too. If you want to choose regular foiling, if that is more comfortable for you, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. I found that I have better results, especially if I'm working on dark hair, or especially if I'm working on coarse hair. So if I'm working in small subsections that I'm teasing, I find it really, really beneficial to keep the subsection and keep that foil or that paper really nice and flat, as opposed to folding it up and creasing it. Because when you fold up and crease, you do run the risk of potentially moving the product around a little bit, especially when we're in the salon and we're in a rush and we're just kind of folding up, trying to get knock that application out. A lot of times what I'll find is it moves the product away and actually causes creasing and inconsistent lift in the hair. So there's something to be conscientious of. It's something that can become a habit very easily. And sometimes it may or may not give us slightly inconsistent results. So I like to just cover all my bases and keep my section and my foil or my paper nice and flat. So I'm going just above now, still maintaining my slight diagonal. Same size weave. My sections are about 1 inch thick. So I'm taking really large sections, maintaining a good amount of depth. And only back combing twice, locking my comb in there. And then applying my lightener. I start with a really nice, heavy application of lightener. So I'm visualizing how high up I want to take this application. So I want to get the majority of that product on there and then feather up to where I want that point of lightness to begin. Same concept as if you were freehand painting. And I really want to drive home the idea of talking about saturation of lightener and how important that is in terms of our end results. If you can see, get a little bit more on there. If you can see in the light there, I know there's a reflection, but there is no visible hair underneath the lightener that I've applied. What that's going to ensure is that those individual hair strands are really truly encapsulated in the blondoir. So there's no inconsistencies in the lift whatsoever. So I'm really kind of covering all my bases. There's nothing worse than speeding through an application, removing the foils and realizing that you have several different levels of lift because maybe we didn't saturate enough. So I want to think about it as if you're almost, putting cream cheese on the bagel, right? So you don't really want to see any bagel underneath the cream cheese. You want to just see a layer of cream cheese. I think about hair the same way. I don't want to see any hair through it because if there are spots where I can see hair through the lightener and then spots where I can't, again, you run the risk of the possibility of inconsistent lift and maybe sometimes even spotting. So moving on to my last subsection in the back here. Still at a diagonal, going just behind the ear, taking a pretty heavy pickup. Back brushing 2 times, and then painting what I'm left with. If you're working with slightly bigger sections or denser hair, you do have a couple of options. You can either take smaller subsections than this to make sure you're truly penetrating all the way through and there's no missed spots in that section. Or what you can do is actually take your foil or your paper, preload it with some of your lightener, and then apply the hair on top of that. So it's almost sandwiched in between, the hair is almost sandwiched in between 2 layers of lightener. So that's a good way to really ensure that if you're working on denser hair, darker hair, or a really coarse texture, it's a really great way to ensure that you're gonna get enough saturation and just make sure you're using a real pretty heavy amount of product. Because there's nothing worse than having it dry out and stop working on you. So just feathering up to where I want that point of lightness to begin. I do switch during my application. From the beginning, when I'm applying, I go flat with my brush to really ensure that I have maximum product. And then once I'm completely happy with the way that that's been applied, then I switch to the corner of my brush to feather up. And that just keeps it nice and delicate because we're not looking for super bold. Cool. If you have any questions as I'm doing this or anything else you want me to go over, please feel free to shoot me a message. All right, working up the head now. Taking my next diagonal subsection. This section is a little bit thicker because it encompasses everything from just below the occipital to just below the crown. Still working at a diagonal. But difference being, my subsections are the same size, between a ½ inch to an inch, depending on the hair density. But what I'm gonna do now is decrease the weight of my weave. So if you can see there, I've got a slightly more fine pickup, but more pieces. This is gonna allow, as I go up through the roundness of the head, we've got a heavier application down here. Once the head begins to round and my sections get a little bit wider and that hair starts to fan out, I'm anticipating having just more of kind of a sparkle of color versus the weight of color that's falling on the hair that's coming straight down. So because this is gonna spread out, this is gonna give me maximum coverage, but really, really delicate placement. And although my subsection is a little bit wider here, one thing that's really beneficial about back brushing my section a couple times is it almost pinches it together because I'm not going all the way up to the root anyways. So I don't have to worry about working in sections that are so small that can only be the width of whatever foil that I'm working on, because then we're worried about drag or slippage or bleeding. When you're actually working like this kind of pinches the hair together and allows you to kind of cover more area, because the real focal point is going to be the mids and the ends, because again, the end result is going to be more of a sombre. I hope that made sense. It made sense in my head, but hopefully it made sense to you guys. sandwiching in here. And then moving on to my next. And I'm only going to be working, even though this section is a little bit wider, I'm still only working pretty much in threes. There are not a lot of foils that are going into the head here because I'm looking for high luxury impact without a lot of work, right? I want to make sure that this is something manageable to really enhance my client's natural color, give them longevity, but not be one of those 8-hour processes of creating full transformation. This is more going to be designed for someone that is maybe experimenting with color and highlighting for the first time, or this is a really great option to move someone out of that 6-stroke 0, that 6N base color that they've had forever. Maybe it's a gray coverage. This is something that you can do to kind of enhance that and add a little bit more interest and dimension and dynamic to without going through a complete overhaul. Sometimes people love the way that their level 6 natural gray coverage looks, but do want a little bit of a change. This would be an ideal way of making that happen for them without spending a ton of time. So I'm taking my last subsection here, just underneath of the crown. Spin this, I'm going to drop her a little bit so you guys can see. So working just beneath the crown here. Still working with a slightly finer pickup because again, the head is rounding. I want to make sure this fans out everywhere and just kind of sprinkles throughout the color and dances around. And this will be my last section through the back. I hope you guys are as excited as I am about this trend movement that is moving away from what we call desaturated or really, really, really heavily lightened blonde hair. Because over time, as we know as stylists, our clients may or may not anticipate this, but as stylists, we know that over time, that hair really becomes almost lethargic. Like it's really looking like it's seen better days. It's really kind of losing its shine. It's losing the health of it. It's losing its tone, especially for those girls that are using, our purple shampoo girls that are using that every single day. Every time they wash their hair, it just starts to really not reflect light the same way. And when hair doesn't reflect light the same way, it doesn't look as healthy as it could. So that deposit of tone and adding a little bit more warmth and neutrality through these shades or through these looks in the collection is going to be really, really beneficial to those girls that are looking to have their hair look healthy and shiny again. Okay, so I'm moving into my final section here, which is just from the center of the front hairline to just behind or just on top of the ear. Still working in diagonal sections. And another thing to consider is, we can, when we're addressing the hairline here, because we're not going so far away from that client's natural color, and we're not even necessarily taking that lightness all the way up to the root area. Again, that's adjustable if you do want to change that and they still want a slightly more impactful money piece. You can absolutely incorporate that as was done on the doll head previously. So I just got that nice little bright bit there. But if you want to just maintain kind of lived in soft sombre effect throughout, you apply this the same way, diagonal backwards. We're not worried about getting high and tight to the root area. We're really just looking for consistency, and what's really going to be seen around their face in this look is going to be through mids and ends. So this is a really great way of accentuating natural facial features or really working with skin tone, because this isn't necessarily going to be, bam, brightness around the face. It's going to be more about how that color is reflecting onto their facial features and reflecting onto their skin tone throughout the mids and ends. Which I prefer. I think that's my favorite approach to hair color when I'm working behind the chair, is really ensuring that that client's getting a customized look that's really designed for their skin tone, their eye color, their lifestyle, and their face shape. We think about that kind of thing in theory. In practice, sometimes it gets lost in translation with the consultation, because so many times, I know I'm guilty of this, is I'm so concentrated on what the client wants, what they're asking me for. Maybe they brought in inspiration pictures from Pinterest, Instagram, whatever it is. I get so wrapped up in recreating a look that I forget that I'm the one responsible for customizing the look and explaining that to them. So if the client trusts you and you have open communication, then it really makes it exciting to talk about future possibilities in terms of changing the tone to really enhance what they're going to look like. There was a seminar that we came out with a few years back called Color Contouring that I thought was really, really impactful for me, because it really went into consultation and how we can change the way we're communicating with our clients in terms of how we're designing and formulating a look for them based on skin tone and eye color. So for example, if you are kind of at a loss for suggesting a change in somebody's color and they're really looking to you for advice or recommendations, then it's really beneficial to know or to think about, okay, you have blue eyes. Your hair color is really, really cool naturally. Maybe you're just a natural, dirty blonde. What happens if we warm that color up? What happens if we warm that hair color up? What's it going to do to your eyes? It's most likely going to make it more of a contrast. Warm colors, contrast, cool colors. So maybe let's think about making you a redhead or like slightly peachy kind of tone to contrast those blue eyes and really, really elevate your color and your skin tone, your eye color, and really just enhance whatever feature is that you love the most, that you really want to bring out and be the first thing that people notice. So just a thought. I like to reincorporate that idea into most of my classes now. Since that seminar was something that we were teaching years ago, that information really stuck with me in a way that I really, really found impactful and insightful. And it's very, very simple, but I think it's something that we get, out of the habit of doing. So I'm moving up the head here. Sections are getting slightly wider, still at a diagonal. I'm getting finer and finer with my weave pickup the higher up I go. So I'm still going a little bit heavier through the bottom, getting slightly more delicate on top as that head starts to round out. My subsections are still about the same size, so between 1/2 inch to 1 inch, depending on end result desired. Really saturating the ends here. Feathering up to wherever I want that to start. Sometimes I come up a little bit higher around the face. Sometimes I keep it uniformly feathered throughout. It's completely up to you and the end result that you want to achieve. One thing, too, that I've also found really, really helpful as I work into my last section here is the art of properly back brushing or back combing hair as you're applying color. So I know I've experienced multiple times learning through trial and error that sometimes the removal process with the shampoo bowl of back brushed highlights can be really, really uncomfortable, time-consuming, painful for us, even more painful for the client. So we've been trying to find ways to kind of work around that and make it more of a seamless process and a more comfortable process for everyone involved. And one of the things that we found, as I tilt her to the side here, is that as I'm back brushing the hair, I'm going to pick up this final weave here, going from front hairline to back of my section. A little bit more fine with my pickup even now. What I found is that starting the tease closest to the root, and then with each back brush, you're coming further and further out. That makes the detangling process so much easier. So meaning I'm starting my back brushing close to the root, maybe go a little bit further out for my second. And then if I'm going to do a third, I'll go a maximum of halfway down if I want to remove the maximum amount of lightness and keep the maximum amount of depth. And then that's when I lock it in. The alternative to that is if you're starting your teasing, your backcombing halfway down the strand and then working up, with additional teases towards the root, that really locks it in a way that becomes painful, uncomfortable, really kind of mats up. And it's just not pleasant for anyone involved. Just try to avoid that. Any little things that we can do like that are going to make our lives easier and really at the end of the day more lucrative because you're taking less time to do these color projects. Anything like that I just think is super, super beneficial as I drop my comb. Another thing that I found makes this backcombing process a lot easier to remove with the shampoo bowl is really trying. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not, depending on the way that you've applied it or the color application that you're working with, is to really try to remove the lightener from the hair when you go to rinse it out. Remove that as much as possible before wetting the tease. Try to keep the tease as dry as possible. So for example, if I'm removing this, I would be removing one foil or paper at a time, rinsing that out of the bowl away from the root area to keep that root and that tease as dry as possible. And then once that's all removed, because I've used Blonde Replex, I know I'm going to follow up with Blonde Replex Step 2, which is the bond neutralizer. It's a very thick consistency. It's very heavy. So it makes brushing out the tease really ideal, especially if the tease has not gotten wet yet. So with wet ends, I'll remove that color, apply Wellaplex Step 2 from root to end, and then gently from bottom to top with my wet brush, go all the way up and delicately remove that because it is still freshly lightened hair. I don't want to be raking and breaking through it and really potentially compromising it in the process on top of my client being uncomfortable. So as much as possible, if you can address that tease while it's still dry, as soon as water hits it, it has a tendency to mat up and lock up and become a lot trickier to remove. So just a suggestion that I found very helpful. So that application is all done. You have a couple different options for the rest of it. Throughout, what I did for our pre-done look was I left this isolated diamond just completely alone by itself. I still applied Shinefinity at the end. I still did the root melting technique that we're going to be working with through the Sombre next. But if you do want a little bit of dimension coming higher up, you can absolutely feel free to continue a couple more subsections throughout the top for more areas of dimension through the surface. If you're working with someone that really wants a truly sombre look or someone that's really interested in just kind of dipping their toe in the water in terms of color and is really scared of maintenance, then I would recommend maybe just leaving this natural and glossing it down with Shinefinity, whatever shade you choose. Cool, cool. With that being said, the final thing that I want to go through is our root melting technique for this look. So one thing that I wanted to bring up was when we launched Signature Naturals as our autumn-winter collection, we also launched 5 new shades of Shinefinity, which was really exciting because it's already such a new color line that it's done so well and people are enjoying it so much that we're already seeing demands for different shades, and we were quick to answer the call on that. So we have 2 new tonal shades. So we've got a 04 stroke 1-2 and a 07 stroke 1-2. What that translates into is a level 4 ash green and a level 7 ash green. So we utilize these a lot for corrective toning. If you're working with a lot of underlying warmth in the hair and really trying to neutralize that as much as possible, or you'll see when you look at the collection in Wella Booking that there are a couple tones that are really smoky and sagey. So we were missing a couple colors that had more of that underlying green tone to it. If you see the swatches of them, they're not scary at all. I know sometimes we hear green and we're like, oh, gotta be careful with that. But they really are designed for depth and like really olivey sagebrush kind of colors. And I think it's really, really beautiful to have that addition to our palette. What we also released, which you get a lot of use out of, are 3 more additions to our stroke 0 family. So 04 stroke 0, a 06 stroke 0, and a 08 stroke 0. We really felt the need to add these into our portfolio of Shinefinity because we know and love the fact that this can be utilized as a really translucent sheer root shadow. What you need for root shadowing is a natural color. So our stroke 0 is designed for natural coverage and depth. If there's no stroke 0 in my formula or no natural in my formula, I'm only getting tone. I'm not really getting depth and coverage. So to really truly create depth in a root shadow, I know I have to have a stroke 0 in my formula. So now we have those ranges from a level 4 up to a level 8, and you can utilize by mixing all of the shades in between. So for example, if you need to root shadow with a 5 stroke 0, equal parts 04 stroke 0 and 06 stroke 0, and so forth. So I'll just show you really quickly. I think we're all really comfortable now with our techniques of root shadowing. So this is gonna be more about formulation ideas than it is gonna be about technique ideas. But if anyone has questions about root shadowing or about technique, again, feel free to shoot me a message. I have mixed up 3 bowls of Shinefinity for this root melt technique. So obviously I have not done this technique of the highlighting on this side, but I'm just going to show you as an example the way that I created our original pre-done. So I've actually mixed in 1 bowl, a 04 stroke 0. So our level 4 natural. In the second, I've mixed the 06 stroke 0, so level 6 natural. And in the third bowl, I have the 08 stroke 0, so level 8 natural. So we're really, really keeping it simple with this, not overthinking it, really getting a maximum fluidity of the color with minimal effort. So we're gonna use our imaginations that this has been highlighted, we've rinsed it out, we've towel dried it, and we're going in for our root shadow and our glaze at the same time. So theoretically, this would be done on shampoo towel dried hair, or if you really, really wanted to add maximum depth and give them maximum longevity for Shinefinity, you could towel dry them, rough dry them with a blow dryer so this does go on dry hair, and that'll give them a little bit more punch to the color. So it really just depends how sheer or how dense you want that pickup of color to be. So I'll go with 1 section here. I typically am not sectioning off a root shadow like this, but this is just for example. The idea of this is going to be starting with my 04 stroke 0, going in at the root, dragging that however far down you want. Same strand of hair, same section of hair, melting that into my 06 stroke 0, just underneath of it. And then throughout the ends, going in with my 08 stroke 0 to finish that off. Once that's complete, I'll take a very fine tooth comb and with 1 pass, comb all the way through, right? So that didn't take a lot of color to actually saturate and penetrate through there. It really spreads through the hair super nicely. And what this is gonna do is gonna give me the most ultimate subtle effect of level 4, level 6, and level 8, combining where they meet. Because of the combination of levels, this will really translate into 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's going to give you the most fluidity of tone throughout if you're really trying to create the most seamless sombre that you possibly can. I'll do that 1 more time. I'm not going to make you guys watch me do an entire root shadow, but the way that I would adjust this if I was doing it behind the chair and not sectioning it off like this necessarily. The way that I would typically do it is apply my 4-stroke 0 everywhere throughout the root and drag that down as much as I need to, or as much as I am wanting. And then go through, since the 4-stroke 0 is everywhere throughout the root already processing, I'll then go through and pick out my larger subsections and then paint my 0-6-stroke 0 into my 0-8-stroke 0 and comb them down one section at a time. So it sounds like a little bit of extra work, but especially if you're doing this on shampoo towel dried hair, it really, really goes quick, because you guys will be amazed if you haven't played around with it yet how quickly and easily it emulsifies and spreads through the hair. So you should be able to get through this application in about 5 to 7 minutes. And a question did come up at one point when I was teaching this. How do I know that the 0-4-stroke 0 isn't going to deposit further, since it's going to be on there for the maximum amount of time? As I'm applying my 0-6-stroke 0 and my 0-8-stroke 0 throughout the mids and ends, once the 0-4-stroke 0 has been processing on the root. I don't really have to worry about that, because again, going back into the science and the methodology behind Shinefinity, you don't have to worry about it over processing or going any darker than it needs to. Once it's really in there, even if it's been on for 20 minutes, it's full processing time. It's not that it's going to stop processing, but what's going to happen is it's going to reach that level 4 or whatever shade that you've chosen at that root area, and it's not going to drop below that level 4, because the pH technology in it has kind of allowed it to just stay there and not move, if that makes sense, tonal wise or depth wise. So again, no matter what shades you're choosing, because again, we have a wide variety of shades within Shinefinity. No matter what shades you're using, the idea of melting 3 of them together is going to be really, really what takes our already blended highlight application into the most seamless combination of tones and end result throughout everything else. So hopefully that helps provide a little bit of inspiration in terms of utilizing that for whatever formulas work for your clients, whatever formulas work for your inspiration and your looks that you're trying to create and achieve behind the chair in your salons. The other thing that I did want to mention before we wrap up is that we also, if you guys are Celestine Perfect users, we also released 3 new shades in Celestine Perfect that link in and are attached to our signature natural collection. So we have a 5-stroke 1-8 now, which is a level 5 ash blue. A 6-stroke 9-1, which is a level 6 soft violet ash. And a 7-stroke 3-6, so that's a level 7 gold violet. These really play hand in hand super well with our signature natural collections, because again, all of them blend warm and cool tones really, really beautifully to create really interesting signature natural color palettes. So with that being said, if you guys have any questions, I'm still on here for just another minute or so you can really feel free to ask me anything. To go back to what we went over, we applied in large diagonal subsections our back-combed weaves diagonally up to just underneath of the crown. Same thing around the face, diagonally up to just underneath of that top diamond that we've created, however high or low you want that to be. And then we back brushed each section and tinted it with Blonde or Plex. I chose 10 volumes. I'm not looking for a lot of lift. If you need more lift, obviously increase your developer strength. And then once that is fully processed, I've left this diamond by itself. Once that's fully processed, I've gone in with Shinefinity to root melt and root shadow into my Sombre. And that's going to be my 0-4-stroke 0 into my 0-6-stroke 0 into my 0-8-stroke 0. I would let that process for the full 20 minutes to ensure that I've got maximum depth. And the end result for any of you guys that joined after I began is this beautiful lady here. So you can see just natural, subtle, seamless results that no matter where the wind picks it up, or no matter if she has it up or down, it's just going to be soft, seamless, looking like elevated natural hair color. So thank you guys. I hope that was helpful. I hope that provided some inspiration for any of you. If you guys have any further questions, my Instagram is neongods. That's neongods. If you need me to point you in the right direction about any further color education, feel free to hit me up. Also, if you haven't already downloaded the Wella Professionals app, please feel free to do so, because the really in-depth step-by-steps of this collection, the overall mood board and color palette, and all of the information about Shinefinity and all of the products in our portfolio are available to you there for free. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I can't wait to do this again. I'm sure I will see you Salon Republic family again very soon. And I hope to hear from you guys online. Thank you so much, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.